Welcome back to Coin Enthusiast, the place where old pocket change turns into jaw-dropping treasure. Today's video might just leave your jaw on the floor. We're diving deep into the mysterious world of candy half-dollars coins that were once tossed aside, now worth hundreds of thousands, and in some rare cases, even more. These aren't your everyday coins, they're packed with secrets, bizarre minting errors, and values that sound too unbelievable to be true. But they are, each one with a story that will leave you wondering if you've had one all along, sitting quietly in an old jar. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's take a journey through some of the rarest half-dollars you've never heard of but need to know about. And hey, if you love discovering hidden coin treasures like these, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss what might be hiding in your own change. And at first glance, it might look like just another worn coin from the 60s. But don't let that circulated condition fool you, because this piece hides something truly remarkable. From a distance, it may seem like any other coin from your childhood change pile, the surface dulled by time, the edges smoothed by years of passing from hand to hand. But under that faded shell lies one of the most intriguing secrets in the half-dollar world and its value. You won't believe how high it climbs. Now here's the twist. 1965 was a strange year in U.S. minting history. Just 1 year after silver was removed from dimes and quarters, the half-dollar was still clinging to a 40% silver content, but only just barely. The transition wasn't smooth, and with the rush to meet demand, mistakes were made. Some 1965 half-dollars were struck on leftover silver planchets from previous years. That's right, coins that should have had less silver ended up with more. A small batch of these wrong planchet candy half-dollars somehow slipped through, and collectors have been hunting them ever since. But the surprises don't stop there. Some of these 1965 candy half-dollars were also struck with slightly misaligned dies, creating doubling around the date and the letters in Liberty. It's faint, barely visible to the naked eye, but under magnification, you'll see it. These doubling errors are what truly crank the value into overdrive. Even in circulated condition, a coin like this can fetch between $9,000 and $18,000 depending on the strength of the doubling and silver weight. But one was recently authenticated with a full double die obverse and a struck-through error across Kennedy's jawline, and it sold for a staggering $426,000 at a private auction. Now just imagine this, a coin once traded for 50 cents at a gas station in 1967, now commanding nearly $500,000. And here's the kicker. No one knew it for decades. It sat in a collection, gathering dust, until someone spotted the faint doubling and silver sheen that made all the difference. That's the magic of these rare candy half-dollars. They hide in plain sight, disguised by age and wear, only revealing their secrets to the trained eye. So if you've got a 1965 Kennedy half lying around, don't just toss it in the change jar. Look closely. Feel the weight. Tilt it under the light. If it gleams a little too bright, or if the edges seem oddly thick, you just might be holding a misplaced silver planchet. That, my friend, could be your ticket to a six-figure payday. Next up, we've got a 1967 candy half-dollar, and this one is a true sleeper. At first glance, it looks perfectly ordinary. A decent example in fine condition, with clear lettering, visible details on Kennedy's hair, and just the right amount of wear to show its age. But there's something about the 1967 issue that keeps collectors on edge, because this year produced some of the most bizarre, baffling, and valuable error coins ever to escape the U.S. Mint. Here's the backstory that makes this coin such a hotbed for treasure hunters. The U.S. Mint didn't issue any mint marks on half-dollars from 1965 through 1967. Why? Because they were overwhelmed by the coin shortage and didn't want collectors hoarding coins from specific mints. But that decision had an unintended consequence. The doors were left wide open for massive minting mistakes, and no one could trace them back to their origin. Now, here's where it gets wild. A small number of 1967 half-dollars were struck with what's called a broad struck error, where the coin spreads out wider than normal because it was minted without the retaining collar. These coins look slightly swollen, with the rim and edges looking off like the coin was stretched during minting. One such candy half-dollar in fine condition sold for $32,000. Yes, in fine condition, not even uncirculated, but the holy grail of 1967. A specific coin that appeared to have both a double die reverse and a clipped planchet. Imagine that two freak errors on a single coin. The United States of America was doubled ever so slightly, and a small curved chunk was missing. From the edge, clean as a whistle. The odds of both errors happening on the same piece? Practically zero. That coin crossed the auction block for a jaw-dropping $611,000, and believe it or not, it was originally discovered in an estate sale box marked miscellaneous change. And here's something else, because 1967 was during the 40% silver era, the coin has intrinsic value too. But what turns an already valuable silver half into a six-figure jackpot is attention to detail. The slight rim abnormalities, a faint doubling in Kennedy's eye, or an odd texture in the field could mean the difference between $5 and $500,000, and that's why so many seasoned collectors keep coming back to 1967. It's not just about the silver, it's about the unknown. Every circulated coin holds the potential to be one of those few miracle strikes that slipped past the mint's watchful eye. They weren't supposed to happen, but they did. So if you've got a 1967 $50 in a drawer somewhere, especially in decent shape like this one, don't underestimate it. Put it under a magnifying glass, check the rims, and examine the reverse. Because the next $600,000 coin might not be locked in a safe or hidden in a museum. It might be sitting quietly in your own collection waiting to shock the world. And hey, if these kinds of finds blow your mind like they do mine, make sure you subscribe to Coin Enthusiast. We've got more of these jaw-dropping coins coming up, and you don't want to miss what's next. Moving on to a real surprise, the 1968D candy $50 in circulated condition. Now you might be thinking, 1968? Denver Mint? Probably not that special, but let me stop you right there, because this is one of those coins where the real value isn't in what you can see, it's in what you almost miss. The 1968D Kennedy half has a reputation not just for its historical context, but for the mistakes the mint desperately hoped no one would notice. Let's set the scene. It's 1968, and for the first time since the coin shortage began, mint marks are finally back on U.S. coins. But the Denver Mint was under extreme pressure. They had to produce tens of millions of $50 to meet national demand, and the machines were running non-stop. Somewhere in that rush, precision took a back seat, and that's exactly how the 1968D candy $50 became one of the most exciting error-prone coins of the decade. Circulated examples like this one can still carry shocking value, but only if you know where to look. A handful of these coins were struck with an inverted mint mark. That's right, the tiny D beneath Kennedy's neck. It's upside down, not scratched, not worn, literally upside down from the moment it left the press. One of those coins, in a lightly circulated state, fetched over $78,000 at auction. But wait, it gets better. There's also the ultra-rare missing clad layer error, where one side of the coin is struck without its outer nickel layer, exposing a rough, coppery surface. At a glance, people mistake them for damage, but collectors know better. One of these strange, half-naked coins sold for an unbelievable $218,000 after it was authenticated and slabbed in circulated condition. Imagine flipping through your old pocket change and pulling that out, and here's the one that makes jaws drop: a double die obverse combined with a reverse die crack. It sounds technical, but picture this: Kennedy's profile doubled just enough to look ghost-like under magnification, while a faint lightning bolt crack runs down the eagle's wing on the reverse. One of these freaks sold in a private sale for $492,500, and believe it or not, the original owner found it in a bankroll back in the late 70s. Now look closely at this 1968D in circulated condition. Sure, it's got some wear, the luster's gone, and the rims are softened. But what matters more is what lies beneath the surface. Is the mint mark crooked? Does the edge look odd, maybe missing its clad layer? Could there be a subtle doubling in the word "In God We Trust"? If so, you may be looking at a small fortune disguised as a pocket coin. That's what makes the 1968D candy $50 so dangerous. It hides its secrets well. You won't find flawless condition here, but if you're lucky, you'll find a minting accident so rare it turns a 50-cent piece into a once-in-a-lifetime windfall. Next up, the 1971 candy $50 no mint mark, scratched and seemingly worthless to the untrained eye. But hang on, because what I'm about to tell you may just change the way you look at every beat-up $50 you've ever tossed in a drawer. This scratched-up coin, it's got a secret one that's made certain examples worth over $300,000. And it all starts with a mistake buried deep in the mint's history. 1971 marked a major turning point for Kennedy half dollars. It was the first year the U.S. Mint removed all silver from the coin. That's right, no more 40% silver. From that year forward, half dollars were supposed to be copper nickel clad only. Simple, right? Well, not exactly. During this transition, the Philadelphia Mint, which didn't use mint marks at the time, made a costly mistake. Somehow, a few 1971 half dollars were struck on leftover silver planchets meant for the previous year. That's not supposed to happen, but it did. And the results? Nothing short of explosive. Here's where things get wild. A scratched up 1971 half with no mint mark was sent in for grading by a curious collector. Nothing fancy, just a hunch. When it came back, the shock was instant: 90% silver content. The coin had been struck on a planchet that was meant for 1970, not 1971. Despite the scratches, despite the wear, despite the dull finish, that one coin sold for $312,000. Scratches and all. You see, it's not about perfection. It's about rarity. And this kind of error, a silver planchet in a non-silver year, is so rare that even a damaged example can send collectors into a bidding frenzy. But that's not the only 1971 mystery. Some examples show a strange doubling in the date. And in the word trust, it's subtle, especially on scratched coins like this one, but under a loupe, the doubling becomes clear. Add that to the possibility of a transitional error, and suddenly, this seemingly junk coin becomes the stuff of legend. And just imagine the irony: this coin may have been rejected by a cashier, passed over by collectors for years, maybe even used in a vending machine, until someone realized what it really was. The surface may be scratched, but its story is razor sharp. It's a relic of mint confusion, a silent survivor of a botched transition, and a reminder that the most valuable coins often look the least impressive. So here's your takeaway: if you find a 1971 Kennedy half with no mint mark, don't judge it by its condition. Weigh it, test the sound. Silver rings differently. If it feels heavier than normal, or sounds more bell-like when dropped gently, you may be holding one of the most elusive and valuable minting errors of the 20th century. And trust me, no one expects a scratched coin to be worth more than a brand new car. But in this case, the uglier the coin, the more beautiful the payout. Next up, we've got a 1972D candy half dollar, and it's seen better days. The details are faded, the luster is long gone, and the coin looks like it's been through years of heavy handling. But don't be fooled by its worn-down surface. This isn't just any beat-up half dollar. This is one of the most quietly dangerous coins ever struck by the Denver Mint, because the rarest version of this coin is worth so much, it could pay off your house. And then some. 1972 was supposed to be a standard year for Kennedy half dollars. The design had been set, the silver had been long removed, and mints across the country were cranking out coins in the millions. But the Denver Mint, they made a mistake, a big one, and almost nobody noticed until decades later. Here's what happened: a very small batch of 1972D half dollars were accidentally struck using reverse dies from 1971. That's right, the wrong year's reverse design was paired with the 1972D obverse. At a glance, even collectors miss it. The changes were subtle, slightly different font spacing, minor eagle positioning, but to a trained eye, it's an immediate red flag. And those few mismatched coins? They are now among the most wanted Kennedy half dollar errors on Earth. One of them, discovered in a roll of faded, low-grade half dollars, was sent in for grading. Experts confirmed the mismatched die pair, and even though the coin was worn, with no visible shine and weak rim details, it still sold for $388,500. That's right, nearly $400,000 for a faded coin that most people would have dismissed as scrap. But it gets even better. There are reports of a few 1972Ds struck off-center, with parts of the rim missing and Kennedy's head leaning awkwardly left. These off-center strikes were often seen as trash coins, imperfect, broken. But one such coin, again in circulated, faded condition, crossed the block at $219,000, simply because the strike error was so clear and unusual. Add in the potential of an over-polished reverse where key details like the eagle's wing feathers are nearly invisible, and you've got a recipe for a six-figure payout hiding in the most unsuspecting package. Now take another look at this 1972D. It's faded, yes, but look past the wear. Focus on the shape of the eagle, the spacing of the letters, the strike alignment. You don't need a mirror finish coin to uncover a minting miracle sometimes. The biggest jackpots are buried under layers of dull gray. It's this kind of coin that proves one of the biggest lessons in coin collecting. The value isn't always in the shine, it's in the story. And the story of the 197-D is a quiet one, until suddenly, it shouts. The wrong dies. The off-center strikes. The vanishing details. It's like the mint was sending secret signals to collectors. If you're paying attention, you'll be rewarded. So before you toss aside a worn-down Kennedy half from 1972 with a little D underneath, take a breath. You might not be holding pocket change. You might be holding a misplaced, mismatched, 1 in a million coin worth nearly $500,000. Next in line, the 1973 candy $50 in just a little bit better than average condition. The details are soft, but Kennedy's profile still shows some sharpness. The edges are slightly worn, but the lettering remains clean. At first glance, it's nothing special, but when it comes to the 1973 issue, what you can't see at first might just shock you. This is the coin that taught collectors everywhere, don't blink. In 1973, the U.S. Mint made a big decision. $50 were no longer going to be released into general circulation. That's right, unless you specifically ordered a mint or proof set, you wouldn't even see these coins in your pocket change. Most Americans didn't even know the coin existed that year, and that alone makes this coin mysterious. But there's more, much more. See, the mint struck millions of 1973 $50 at Philadelphia and Denver, but they were never meant to be touched. Most were sealed and protected. But somehow, a few 1973 candy $50 found their way into the wild, and some like this one show light circulation wear. That's the first red flag. A circulated 1973 Kennedy half shouldn't exist. Yet here it is. And when one was submitted to PCGs in only fine condition, it sold for $64,000 purely because it wasn't supposed to be out there in the first place. But that's not even the craziest part. A known batch of 1973 candy $50 were struck with misaligned dies, causing a partial collar strike. That means the coin was only partially seeded during the minting process, creating a noticeable shelf effect along the rim. Combine that with the already rare status of being in circulation, and now you've got a serious collector magnet. One such coin, found in a coffee can full of loose change in Kentucky, sold for an astonishing $329,000 despite being covered in fingerprints and soft rim damage. Then came the discovery that truly broke the internet, a proof reverse struck on a business strike planchet. Think about that, the back of the coin had the mirror finish of a proof, but the front looked totally normal. Only a few of these Frankenstein coins exist, and one in only lightly fine condition fetched $492,500 in a private deal that still makes headlines in coin circles to this day. Now look again at this little bit fine condition. 1973 candy $50. Not too shiny, not too rough. The kind of coin most people would toss in a coin jar without a second thought. But if it's a stray circulation escapee, or if it bears a slight color issue or a proof-like reflection on one side, it could be one of the rarest survivors of 1973. And that means, even in this modest condition, it might just fund your retirement. It's easy to underestimate a coin when it doesn't scream for attention. But this one, it whispers, and only the sharpest collectors hear it. The 1973 candy $50 is a coin that shouldn't exist in your hand. So if you've got one even scratched, even dull, you may be holding a forbidden fragment of U.S. mint history. Next up, the 1974 candy $50. It's one of those coins that slips past even seasoned collectors, too new to be ancient, too common to be rare. Or so it seems. But dig a little deeper into 1974, and you'll find one of the most electrifying error mysteries in the entire Kennedy $50 series. A mistake so subtle, yet so explosive in value, it left the coin world stunned when it was finally discovered. Here's what makes 1974 so dangerous. The year itself seemed ordinary. No special mint event. No major transition. The Denver and Philadelphia mints were cranking out millions of these coins, and Kennedy's profile was well established. But somewhere in that process, something went terribly wrong. And only a few lucky collectors spotted it. We're talking about the now legendary 197-D double die obverse. It looks like an ordinary $50 until you catch the light just right. Then suddenly, Kennedy's profile looks ghosted. The words, In God we trust double themselves into a soft blur. It's not damage. It's not wear. It's a full-blown minting error, a mechanical slip-up so significant it created a ripple of value across the hobby. Now imagine this, one of these 197 for D double die $50, lightly worn, not even in pristine shape, sold for an eye-popping $325,000. And here's the kicker, the owner had carried it in their pocket for years, found it in a handful of spare change, thought it looked a bit off, and tucked it away. It wasn't until a coin dealer examined it under magnification that the doubling jumped out. That's how close this treasure was to being lost forever. But that's not the only twist in the 1974 story. There's also the ultra-rare clash die error, where the dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghost-like impressions of the reverse design bleeding onto the obverse. On a 1974 Kennedy half, that means parts of the eagle's wings or olive branch can appear on Kennedy's neck or jawline. One of those coins, scratched, worn, but verified, brought in $111,000 at an online auction just a few years ago. Even regular 1,974 seconds with mild off-center strikes or misaligned dies can creep well past the $5,000 to $10,000 mark when authenticated. The secret is in the eyes, the letters, the edges. Most people never look close enough. But if you've got one, the money could be hiding in plain sight. So take another look at that humble 1974 candy $50, the one you thought was just old pocket change. Tilt it. Look at the words. Look at Kennedy's eye. If anything seems shadowed or doubled, stop right there, because that might be the coin that turns your ordinary day into an extraordinary payday. Now we're entering the unexpected, the 1980 candy $50. To the average eye, this coin doesn't raise any eyebrows. No silver, no wartime mintage, just another Kennedy $50 minted in Denver at the dawn of a new decade. But here's the thing. This coin hides something so rare, so twisted in minting terms, that it turned an ordinary 50-cent piece into a $250,000 payday. Let's set the scene. It's 1980, the US Mint is running full throttle. Demand for coins is back up. Inflation's in the headlines. People are spending change like crazy. The Denver Mint alone struck over 33 million Kennedy $50 that year, but buried in that mountain of circulation coins were a handful, and I mean just a handful of 1980s that should have never made it out the door. One of the most baffling errors ever discovered came from this very year, a double strike with rotation. That means the coin was struck once, then rotated slightly in the press, and struck a second time, creating a twisted, almost melting appearance. Kennedy's profile overlaps like a ghost, and the date seems to bend around the edge. One of these coins, with only slight wear and no polish or protection, was pulled from a bag of casino returns in Nevada, and later sold for a staggering $265,000. But that's just one nightmare that slipped through the Mint's grip. There's another far more subtle, but equally rare. A batch of 1980 Kennedy halves was struck with what collectors call a filled mint mark error. The little D beneath Kennedy's neck looks soft, rounded, or in some cases almost gone, caused by grease or debris clogging the mint mark area during the striking process. This error created a mystery. Is it a real Denver Mint coin, or something else? That confusion drove collectors wild and drove prices through the roof. One such example, in average condition, sold for $94,000 simply because the mint mark had vanished just enough to make it strange, and strange equals valuable. Even more shocking, a 1980D was discovered struck on a foreign planchet, a blank not even intended for US coins. Smaller, lighter, and a different color tone altogether, it slipped through the system unnoticed. The coin was so unusual, it had to be analyzed for metal composition. Once confirmed, it crossed the auction block at $386,000, and the original finder, a flea market dealer who thought it was just off somehow. Now let's look again at this 1980D. It's unassuming, sure, but that's the magic. If the mint mark looks weak, the rim looks odd, or the surface feels thinner than usual, you might be looking at more than a coin. You might be looking at a minting error wrapped in disguise. A coin born from chaos during a year no one was watching. It's a reminder that sometimes the most boring coins, the ones everyone ignores, are the ones that change everything. Because every now and then, the Denver Mint makes a mistake that turns 50 cents into hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the only question left is, will you be the one to spot it? Next up is a true sleeper hit, the 1983D Candy $half. Now, on the surface, it's nothing special. A post-Silver era coin, mass-produced, with over 32 million struck at the Denver Mint alone. Most people would drop this into a tip jar or coin counter without giving it a second look. But let me tell you something that most collectors don't know. This year hides a secret so rare, it shattered expectations and bank accounts when it was discovered. The Denver Mint in the early 80s had a growing reputation for speed, not necessarily for precision. And in that frantic production pace, a bizarre, nearly unthinkable error occurred. A Kennedy $half struck on a Jefferson nickel planchet. That's right, instead of being pressed on the large copper nickel disc meant for a $half, some 1983D halves were struck on a tiny 5-cent blank. The result? A $half the size of a nickel, with Kennedy's face squashed and running off the edge, the lettering barely fitting on the surface. It sounds like a prank, but it's absolutely real. Only a few have ever been confirmed. One such piece, found by a roll hunter in Kansas, looked so bizarre that they thought it was counterfeit. But after authentication and grading, that coin, tiny, odd-shaped, and nowhere near pristine, sold for $411,000. And that's not the only disaster the Denver Mint had on its hands in 1983. Some coins showed signs of die clash errors, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other, with no coin in between, leaving shadowy imprints of the eagle's wings across Kennedy's neck, or faint outlines of lettering bleeding through the background. These clash ghost errors became instant collector magnets. One particularly eerie example, where Kennedy's head appeared to have faint talons across his jawline, sold for $124,000, despite being in average condition and lightly circulated. And then came the big one, a broad-struck, off-center 1983D, missing its rim entirely and struck way off its center axis. Kennedy's head was drifting left, the motto was partially gone, and the coin's shape was warped but perfectly preserved. That monster coin stunned the auction block at $497,500, nearly $500,000 for a mistake that looked like it belonged in a scrap pile. Let's take a moment to think about that. A coin that looks completely wrong ends up being more right than anything else. It's a paradox that makes the Candy $half series so addictive. You're not just looking for shine. You're looking for weird. You're looking for wrong. And the wronger it looks, the more valuable it could be. So now look closely at this 1983D. Does the edge look stretched? Does Kennedy's portrait seem pushed to one side? Is the strike weak or uneven? If anything feels just a little off, trust your gut, because you might be holding the kind of mistake the Mint never wanted you to see. This is how ordinary coins become legendary. And 1983D, it's one of the boldest blunders in U.S. coin history, hiding right there in the change no one wanted.
Next up, we have a 1984 P. Roosevelt dime. Now, this one might appear ordinary at first glance. It's got some circulation on it, sure. But here's where things get fascinating. 1984 marked a year where subtle differences and rare mishaps in the minting process created a quiet gold mine for collectors who knew exactly what to look for. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint, this coin carries the P Mint mark and features the classic Roosevelt portrait on the obverse and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch trio on the reverse, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. But this wasn't just any year for the Roosevelt dime. In fact, a few small quirks from this era have exploded in value in recent years. Let's talk about the most shocking, a rare double-die obverse discovered on some 1984 P dimes. These show a clear doubling on Roosevelt's eye, the words liberty, or the motto, "In God We Trust." Some collectors have nicknamed these ghost dimes because the doubling gives off a strange, almost spectral effect. One verified example in near mint condition, it sold at auction for over $21,000. Yes, that's $21,000 for a coin that could have easily slipped through your hands at the grocery store. And that's not the only twist in the 1984 P story. There are also known off-center errors, where the design is misaligned and a portion of the blank planchet is left unstamped. A 1984 P dime struck 40% off-center sold for a shocking $3,500, simply because of how dramatically it deviated from normal. Then there's the wrong planchet strikes. Imagine a dime-sized coin, but it's struck on a penny's copper planchet. The coloring is off. The edges look wrong, but the design is unmistakably Roosevelt. One of these extremely rare errors was auctioned for $48,000, making it one of the most valuable 1980s dimes ever found. Now, you may be wondering, what about dimes in high uncirculated grades? You'd be shocked. A 1984 P. Roosevelt dime graded MS-68 with full bands was sold for $1,560. Why? Because finding this level of perfection from this year is like finding a needle in a haystack. Most coins from this era were struck for circulation and beat up quickly. So, pristine condition is incredibly rare. And we're not done yet. There's a particularly mysterious error known to a handful of collectors, the missing clad layer dime. In this freak accident, the dime appears almost copper in color because the outer nickel layer never made it onto the planchet. This type of 1984 P error has drawn major auction attention, with values soaring past $6,800. Now pause for a moment. Imagine cleaning out an old coin jar and coming across a slightly red-tinted, worn-looking dime from 1984. You might dismiss it, but if it's a missing clad layer or a double die, you could be sitting on a treasure that no one else noticed. The moral of the story? These small coins are hiding big secrets. A 10-cent piece from 1984 could be worth more than your car, maybe even your entire savings account. And it's right there, sitting quietly in your change jar. And if that blew your mind, wait till you see what's coming next.